The ancient manor of Oakhaven stood cloaked in perpetual twilight, its skeletal branches of aged oak trees clawing at a sky forever bruised with overcast gray. Within its forgotten study, a chamber steeped in the scent of aged parchment, forgotten lives, and the faint, cold whisper of decay, Elara sat hunched over her texts. The crucible of her medical dissertation, a relentless, carnivorous beast, demanded every ounce of her dwindling vitality. Weeks blurred into a ceaseless, torturous grind, the only true companion her mounting dread and the immutable deadline that loomed closer with each passing, sleepless night. Outside, the whispers of the ancient, primeval forest that swallowed the manor whole were a constant, unsettling hum, a lullaby of slow, creeping things. It began subtly, as all true horrors do, with a seed of unease planted in the mundane. Through the study's leaded glass window, beyond the gnarled oak that clawed at the very pane, she first glimpsed it. A silhouette. A person, perhaps, standing motionless amidst the encroaching gloom of the woods. A caretaker, perhaps, or a stray hiker hopelessly lost in the dense, suffocating growth. Lara, her mind consumed by intricate surgical diagrams and labyrinthine anatomical charts, dismissed it with a tired sigh, attributing it to a trick of the failing light, a phantom conjured by her overtaxed, sleep-deprived mind. But it persisted, day after day, as the ink bubbled across her notes and the moon waxed and waned through the bruised clouds. A figure remained, unmoving, always unnervingly facing her, even at the most ungodly hours, when the only sound was the mournful creak of the old house settling deeper into its bones, a sound like a whispered complaint. The silhouette was there. A chill began to permeate the study, a damp, sepulchral cold that defied the roaring fire in the hearth, seeping into her very bones. Lara tried to rationalize it, a cleverly placed scarecrow, a forgotten stone statue, a twisted tree stump mimicking human form. Yet a cold, gnawing certainty took root in her marrow. This was no inanimate object. This was a presence, malevolent and patiently watchful. Her exhaustion deepened into a profound, unshakable weariness that became her constant shadow, clinging to her like a shroud. Her head throbbed with a dull, incessant ache, a constant pressure behind her eyes, as if something were slowly, inexorably squeezing her skull. The figure in the window seemed to grow, to loom larger, its details slowly resolving from the murky distance, like a photograph developing in the dark room of her dread. Impossibly long, dark hair seemed to cascade down its shoulders, a curtain obscuring its face, a void where features should have been. It never moved, never shifted, never blinked. It simply watched, its invisible gaze a physical weight on her. One particularly oppressive evening, the air in the study growing thick and heavy, like congealed blood, Elara's frayed nerves finally snapped. Her eyes, burning from weeks of sleeplessness and fear, fixed on the unblinking sentinel. She leaned closer to the window, pressing her forehead against the shockingly cold glass, desperate to discern its features, to break the sinister spell it had cast upon her. And then, a sickening lurch in her gut. A cold, sharp clarity pierced through the fog of her exhaustion, a shard of ice in her mind. The figure, it wasn't outside at all. The impossible length of its hair, the stark, unnatural stillness, the way its silhouette perfectly mirrored her own posture. It was a reflection, not of the world beyond the glass, but of something within her own room, something standing silently, patiently, directly behind her. Her blood ran colder than the tongue. She spun around, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, echoing in the suffocating silence of the ancient room. The study, once a sanctuary of knowledge and the familiar, comfortable books, now felt like a crypt, the air electric with unseen menace. There, directly behind her, where no one had been moments before, stood the entity. Taller than any human, its form a wavering shroud of shadow and elongated, impossible limbs, its head a featureless void obscured by a cascading torrent of black, oily hair that seemed to absorb the very light around it. It was the very same figure she had seen reflected in the glass, yet infinitely more terrifying now that it stood tangibly before her, its presence a gravitational pull. A guttural gasp tore from Alara's throat, but it was swallowed by the sudden, bone-deep chill that seized her, freezing her in place. The entity glided forward, its movement silent, fluid, predatory, like smoke given malevolent form. Long, slender fingers, like skeletal branches stripped bare in winter, extended from the shroud, reaching for her. She tried to scream, to recoil, to fight, but her limbs were suddenly leaden, her voice trapped somewhere deep in her chest. Its embrace was not a touch of comfort, but of pure, suffocating emptiness, a profound cold that burned. A freezing fire spread through her veins, draining her very essence, siphoning away her warmth, her memories, her very life force. Her vision blurred, the contours of the study warping into a grotesque nightmare. She felt her consciousness, her identity, her very self, dissolving, being siphoned away into the abyss of its being. A chilling, ethereal whisper echoed in the void where her mind had been, a voice that was and was not her own, murmuring, like a promise of eternal dread, "Mine, you are mine, forever." The morning light, pale and indifferent, filtered through the leaded pane of Oakhaven Manor study. Huddled over the same medical texts, a figure sat. Its posture was identical to Alara's, its long dark hair now falling forward, obscuring its face, just as it had for weeks from the window's perspective. But the subtle tremor of nervous energy that had once animated Alara was gone. A profound, unsettling stillness radiated from it, a silence that spoke of depths no human soul could fathom. Slowly, deliberately, it lifted its head, and then it turned. Its gaze, empty yet infinitely deep, settled on the window, piercing through the ancient oak, searching the distant, forgotten trails of the forest, waiting patiently for the next unsuspecting soul to stumble into its line of sight.